Welcome to Generations, a program for seniors, people who know seniors, or people who are someday going to become seniors. I'm David Lepaco. I'll be your host for this episode of Generations. Today we have a special program devoted to the acronym TBI, which some of you might not be familiar with, but that stands for traumatic brain injury. And often traumatic brain injuries are the results of falls. I know, for example, a friend of mine was thrown off a horse many years ago and had a severe brain injury that she never fully recovered from. I know that just the other day, I took a little tumble and wound up with a sprained wrist. And so people do fall. And if you fall, then traumatic brain injuries can follow from that. So it's an important issue that many times seniors are having to confront because frankly they fall more often. And I've heard so many stories of people who are older who have health problems that are began because they fell in some way or another. But before we get to that, let's check in with our co-host for the day. First of all, we have Mike Rosberg. Mike, have you had any experiences with falling? And welcome to today's program.
Hi, Dave. Well, actually, this January when the snow melted, I'm a gardener, and I woke up one morning with some kind of severe vertigo. But I nonetheless wanted to get the leaves raked out in the garden. So over the course of about 5 days, I fell down about 15 times. But each time I fortunately just kind of rolled a little bit and didn't strike my head. So I think I came close, but was fortunate that nothing severe happened.
Okay, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Beverly Crosby is with us today. Not always a member of the panel, but always happy to see her on our screen. Beverly, have you had any experiences with falling?
Well, I did. I had one that wasn't a fall, but it was a car accident where I was hit. Somebody ran a red light, and that shot pain through my arm and through my neck and through my back. And I, for the first month, I did not know who I was. I was like, who is this girl? Because it affected my mind. And then later on, but then eventually, everything came back. And then I took a fall walking at my favorite park, getting some exercise, tripped on some cement that was up. All I could think about when I was going down was I can't hit my head, can't hit my head, can't hit my head, because I knew that could be very serious. I broke some bones and fractured my sternum, other things, but yes, brain injuries or anything like that, it can take a long time to get over. So I was very aware that I could, if nothing else, I could not hit my head.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you. And finally, we have on our co-host Nadia Giordana, who has had some experience with falling, although apparently less than the rest of us. But tell us what you can say about your falling episodes.
Uh, throughout my life, I have had two or three moments when usually on ice, as Amy will talk about later, but usually on ice, and where I was really glad and grateful that things didn't turn out worse than they could have been.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't take much. And as Amy is going to tell us with her story, it can all happen in just an instant. But thank you all co-hosts. Why don't I introduce our special guest for the day? And she has extensive experience with TBI, not only personally, but I think in terms of research and advocacy. And her name is Amy Zellmer. Welcome to our show, Amy. Let me introduce her simply by reading her bio a little bit, and I think you'll understand why we have her on the program. Amy is an award-winning author, keynote speaker, editor-in-chief of the Brain Health magazine, an advocate of traumatic brain injury issues. She hosts the Faces of TBI podcast series, as well as the TBI TV on YouTube, and co-hosts a particular contributor to Thrive Global, and it's Amy's TBI Tribe. And so she's online with a private Facebook Facebook group for TBI survivors. So she does a lot in the TBI community, and I may have mangled some of that, but the bottom line is that she has done a lot of stuff connected with traumatic brain injuries, and it all began with your own story and what happened to you. And I think it's just a great cautionary tale. Amy, why don't you start by telling us what happened to you, which led you down this very long path of dealing with traumatic brain injuries?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dave, for having me here today. So as most TBI survivors can tell you, I remember the exact date. It was February 3rd, 2014. I had taken my Yorkie. I had a Yorkie at the time. Her name was Pixie, and she was just a little 5-pound Yorkie. And I had taken her out in the morning for a little walk. And it was the dead of winter. It was February. It was that winter when it was like 20 below for, like a month. It was a horrible winter here in Minnesota. And we were walking down the driveway, which had a fairly steep incline to it. I lived in an apartment building at the time. And it looked like it had been cleared. It looked fine. And I hit a patch of black ice and my feet literally went out from under me. And I had her in my arm because she was too cold. She didn't, little princess didn't want to put her paws down. And so I was carrying her. And so I didn't break my fall at all with my hands because I kind of instinctively did this to hold her. And so because I was on an incline, I landed on the back of my head first. And I still can remember the sound it made as I made impact. And I remember going, oh crap, expletive. And I didn't think I had blacked out, but how do you know you blacked out, right? If you're the one that blacked out, you don't know. And so when my doctor kind of walked me through it later, he's like, well, Pixie was here when you fell. Where was Pixie when you finally got up? And I'm like, oh, she was like a good 20, 30 feet away from me. So she had had time to get up and walk away. And if you knew anything about Yorkies, they like are Velcro dogs. And so it would have taken a lot for her to start walking away from me. So we think I was unconscious for a couple minutes, but only she knows, and she never told.
So then what happened as a consequence of that? How did you know you had a problem, and what did you try to do to deal with it?
Yeah, I knew right away I wasn't okay. I got up and I put my hand back here. It was just excruciating pain. It felt like somebody was stabbing me, and I fully expected to see blood on my hand, but I did not. It was what's considered a closed head injury. I had excruciating pain. I was seeing the proverbial stars, right, in my vision. And I could hardly bend over to pick her up. It just hurt so bad when I bent over. And I got back to my apartment. I called a neighbor and I was like, I think I need to go to the emergency room. And she had brothers who played football. And so she was like, okay, so keep in mind, this is 2014. She goes, who's the president? I said, Bill Clinton. And so I was, several presidents off with that answer. And she had asked what I had for dinner last night. And I was like, I don't know. Why are you asking me this? And she gave me an ice pack to put on my head and she told me I was fine and she left. And meantime, I knew I wasn't okay. So I called another friend and she's like, please go see my husband, who is a chiropractor. So I went to see him right away. And he's like, oh yeah, you have a pretty severe concussion. I tore muscles and tendons and stuff in my neck and shoulders, and I dislocated my sternum. So I, did a number on top of hitting my head. But it started a journey unlike anything I could have ever imagined. As the days went on, fatigue, light and sound sensitivity. My short-term memory, I can't even explain how bad it was. I was a photographer at the time, and if I had a client coming at, say, 11 o'clock, I had to set an alarm for 10:30, 10:45, 10:50, 10:55, and 11 because I just would forget that fast. Oh, I have a client coming. Keep doing whatever I'm doing. My alarm goes off again. Oh, that's right. I have a client coming. Keep doing whatever I'm doing. I mean, I can't even explain how terrible that short-term memory was. Um, so, as the weeks went by and my symptoms weren't relieving, and I had gone to the neurologist who told me there's nothing we can do. You just have to give it more time, which in hindsight is terrible advice and inaccurate. But I didn't know that at the time. And we have been taught to trust our doctors. And so I just continued trusting my doctors. And I turned to yoga to try and help me find some inner guidance. And it took me several years to find the proper help. And it was incredibly frustrating. It was really life-changing. I can't even explain how challenging it was going through all of the symptoms I went through.
That is a riveting story. Questions or comments from our co-hosts?
I
Yes.
wanted to say I am so sorry that this injury happened to you, Amy, but I am proud of you that you took this traumatic event and turned it into something that helps other people. I'm wondering if what of the symptoms that you had, and I know you're not a doctor, what of the symptoms that you had might be relatable to the aging brains of senior citizens? What kind of symptoms are similar?
Mm. I guess the memory stuff was really, really challenging. I don't know if any of you have read the book Still Alice. It's a fiction book, but it's written from the firsthand perspective of a woman with early onset Alzheimer's. And she talks about in the story how she went out for a run. She was hiding it from her family. She knew something was going on. And she went out for her daily run and all of a sudden didn't know where she was. She was in her neighborhood, but she panicked. She didn't know where she was. I felt that. I would be somewhere driving and I'd be like, where am I? What road am I on? And I'd have to pull over, look on my GPS. Oh, okay, I am where I thought I was. Like, I just remember that so vividly because I think I had read that book shortly before my accident. So that memory impairment, definitely can be relatable for seniors, especially, I mean, as we age, we have memory problems in general, right? Without a brain injury. It's just part of that cognitive decline as we age. And when I say cognitive decline, our brains are growing until we're 25 and then they start declining at 25. So by the time we're 50, right? Like we're halfway in between that. And so the short-term memory stuff, a lot of my symptoms were just cognitive, but also like the visual, vision and sound stimulation. So, I don't know if that's quite relatable just with aging brain health, but definitely that memory stuff. I think a lot of people could relate.
Beverly?
Okay, I would like to ask you, I want to take you back to your accident and the process that you went through. I read on one of the your podcasts or one of the websites that you saw a functional neurologist who was able to help you. First of all, Amy, can you tell us, and for the viewers' information, can you tell us what functional neurology actually is? And then
Yeah.
second part of the question is, how did this person help you?
Mhm. Yeah. So, great question. Functional neurologists are typically a chiropractor or a PT who has hundreds of hours of functional neurology training. And so the doctor that I saw was a chiropractor with the functional neurology diplomate. And that's all they work on. Like when you think of a chiropractor, people kind of like panic, like, oh, I don't need my back cracked. And it's like that's not what they do. They strictly are focusing on brain health. And so for me, one of my most debilitating symptoms was dizziness. I just constantly, like, I didn't have positional vertigo, which is when crystals in your ear dislodge. That's one of the most common forms of vertigo. I was a photographer. I don't remember if I already said that. And so my eyes, I was very in tune with my eyes, and I could tell my eyes weren't working right. And I could tell my eyes were causing my dizziness. And the neurologist and other doctors kind of dismissed that and were like, oh, no, that's not a thing. And when I kind of have to tell the backstory to tell how I got there. So I started writing on HuffPost. I had published a personal blog post on my own blog at my 1 year mark. To just kind of share with people what had happened in my life. And a new friend that I had made was like, I think you should submit this to HuffPost. And I was like, why? She's like, I just have a feeling that this is going to help somebody. And so I did, and it went viral. I had no idea, that this would happen. It went totally viral. And in the process of going viral, this functional neurologist found me because I had never heard of it. And he found me and reached out to me and was like, I think I can help you. And I blew him off for a few months because I was like, what are you going to do? All these other doctors are telling me there's nothing they can do. And he was persistent. And so finally I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? And so I went to see him, and my initial exam was 2.5 hours long. Up to that point, no doctor had spent more than like 20 minutes with me, including the neurologist. And he had this, it looks like a scarf, and it's red and white striped. And he goes, follow the red stripes with your eyes, as he moved it across the screen, or, in front of me. I wasn't on a screen. And I was like, oh, stop. That's making me dizzy. And he's like, yes, it's coming from your eyes. And it was so affirming and validating to finally have someone acknowledge, yes, it's your eyes, when every other practitioner I saw told me, no, it's not your eyes. And so my eyes weren't tracking together. And that's what I felt. But everybody made me feel dumb when I brought it up when I went to other doctors. And so my left eye, so when my eyes would move, my right eye would move, and then my left eye would take a minute. Well, not a minute, but it felt like a minute to follow. And that's what was causing me to feel so off balance and dizzy. And so I hate to say they were simple exercises, but to a healthy person, they would seem like so simple, like follow my thumb or look from here to here. But when your eyes aren't working, these were very, very challenging and tiring exercises. But within a week of working with him, that dizziness just like went from a 10 out of 10 to like a 4 out of 10. And that freed up more energy to be able to start working on other symptoms that have been bothering me. So functional neurology takes a more functional approach to neurology, and we don't live in a static world, right? A lot of treatments are very static. And so this is more functional, like, okay, you're going to walk while you do this exercise of following your thumb, because in a real world, you're going to walk and things are going to move around you. And so that's where the functional component of functional neurology comes from.
Well, I would like to ask a couple of questions. First of all, as one ages, and as you mentioned, your brain starts going down at age 25, What kinds of things can you do to improve the health of your brain? And then also, I was kind of wondering, I think you may have been just talking about this, but when there's an injury to a certain part of your brain, is the rest of the brain able to sort of adapt? And I understand there are 13 or 14 different parts of the brain. Is one part able to sort of cover for the other? Uh, and is that how you get back some of your skills that you've lost?
Really good question. Yes. So your brain is incredibly brilliant. And when you damage a part of it and the signal no longer can go through it, it goes around it. So it becomes less efficient, right? Because now it's taking the long way around. And with functional neurology or other forms of treatment, we're trying to tell the brain how to go back to this signal so that it's not doing this, it's now going back to here. And that takes like an intensive treatment of like lots of repetitions. So like my eye exercises, I was doing 5 times a day for a couple minutes each time, to try and get that brain to rewire and go back. Now, sometimes it's damaged too badly and it can't go back, right, to this route. So maybe it does have to keep doing this, but it can still be trained to be a little more efficient, if that makes sense. So it depends on the severity of your injury, but in a lot of cases, we can train it how to go back to the efficient route. Neuroplasticity is probably a term you've heard, and our brains are so amazing at, like I said, they're really brilliant. They know how to go around, but we have to tell it how to go back to that route. So your other question about what are some things we can do preventatively, vitamin D, fish oil, these are great supplements. In fish oil, you do need to take in a higher dose than like what your doctor might tell you to take. And again, consult with a physician before you do any of these things because medications can interact with certain supplements. But vitamin D and fish oil are great at protecting our brain. So if you were to have an incident, there's also a lot of research with Alzheimer's and dementia and these supplements. You can do some searches on that. Brain games. I did a ton of brain games. They hurt my head so bad at the beginning. Like literally. Oh, I'm blanking on what they're called. There's a name for them. Um, um,
Brain teasers.
No, like deductive reasoning. And so like it gives you a word story, like Susie and her 3 brothers live in the woods, and then you have all these clues and you have to figure out who is which brother. I think it's called deductive reasoning. And I just went online and found them, and there's like easy, medium, and hard. And I started with the easies, and they were so hard. But they helped a lot. So any kind of brain game. My mom loves to do find a words. She's 87. Those are fantastic at helping you stay sharp and finding those words. Reading, just simply reading is, a great brain workout. Of course, walking or some sort of exercise is also really important to getting the oxygen flowing and getting oxygen to your brain.
Is there any food in particular which you should eat a lot of?
Yeah, so your good fats, right? Like your avocados, walnuts, cooking with like olive oil, avocado oil, different, the good oils. Staying away from inflammatory foods, which are going to be your pastas, your anything with lots of carbohydrates in it, empty carbs, I should say, because like fruits and vegetables have carbs, but those are good carbs that we want to be eating. But staying away from empty carbs, which I know is so hard for, our American diet. We love our bread and pastas. But yes, those
Eating an apple pie a day would not be your solution to this, would it?
probably not. And the refined sugars too are bad for our brain.
So, Amy, after all these years, if you could quantify it, say we said 100 is being back to normal, everything's normal, functioning the way it used to function. Where do you think you're at now? And does that number keep going up, or is it kind of stabilized to the point where you're at 85 and you think you're just going to be there for the rest of your life?
Yeah, good question. So if you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said I was at about 80% and I was okay with it. I still definitely had some lingering symptoms. And at that point, I was, gosh, I'm 10 years out now. So I was, 5 years out at that point. Um, I was okay with that. I'm like, 80% back is good, right? A lot of people don't get that good. So I felt very fortunate. But in the last like 2 years, I feel I've moved forward even a little bit more. I'm not as easily fatigued. Because that was still one of my worst lingering symptoms, is just everything made me tired. And I still get tired, but I can manage it a lot better now. And so I would say now I'm more at like 90%. And I still continue to work with my functional neurologist, not as frequent, but I still, if I feel some, like last October, I had some sudden vertigo come on, and I was like, what is this? And we think I had a virus, and, a virus can just cause weird symptoms in our bodies. And so it ran its course and then it seemed to go away. But no matter where you are in your journey, there's always hope. And so don't ever give up. If you haven't gotten the proper resources and treatment yet, just know that they are out there. And don't give up hope on that journey, because you can always get better.
Although I hate to end on so quickly, we really are out of time. And Amy Zellmer, thank you so much for being our guest. Maybe you can come up sometime and talk some more about brain health. It's an important issue for all of us. And so I'll simply say that thank you again. Thanks to all of our co-hosts. Please do what you can to stay safe. And let's hope we can all see you with good brain health on our next episode of Generations.